This is about Claude, a daily digest of news and discourse about the AI I keep coming back to. Whether you're a budding power user or merely Claude curious, we aim to keep you informed and help you make sense of where Claude is headed. Over the past week, we've covered a lot of ground. Dario Amadei's Davos predictions, the Ralph Wiggum technique, the ChatGPT moment discourse, Cowork's first fortnight. Each story felt distinct. Different angles, different stakes. But there's a thread running through all of them that I want to name today. It's this. The ceiling on what Claude can do is higher than most people think, significantly higher. And the people who've discovered that, through experimentation, through persistence, through sheer willingness to try things that seem like they shouldn't work, are pulling away from those who haven't. Demis Hassabis gave this a name at Davos. He called it the capability overhang, the gap between what current models can already do and what most users are actually getting out of them. It's a useful phrase, but the phrase is less interesting than what's happening on the ground. So today, what the overhang actually looks like, why it persists, and what closing it might require. Let me start with something Boris Cherny said in his Fortune interview last week. Cherny runs Claude Code at Anthropic. He built the original version as a side project. He knows better than almost anyone what the tool was designed for and what people are actually using it for. Here's his list. People are using Claude Code for vacation research, building slide decks, cleaning up email, cancelling subscriptions, recovering wedding photos from old hard drives, monitoring plant growth. Someone used it to control their oven. His summary. We built a race car and people are using it to pick up groceries. There's something important in that line. The usual story about AI tools is that they're overhyped, that the demos are impressive, but the reality disappoints. The capability doesn't match the marketing. Claude Code inverts that. The marketing said, coding tool. The reality is, general purpose agent that happens to work through code. The capability was there all along. People just had to discover it. This is what Hassabis means by capability overhang. The models have pulled ahead of most users' ability to exploit them. Even if capabilities froze today, no new releases, no upgrades. There's unexplored territory in what's already shipping. Anthropic's own economic index from earlier this month puts numbers to this. On Claude.ai, users successfully complete tasks that would take a human about 19 hours, at a 50% success threshold. On the API, typically more sophisticated use cases, the equivalent is about 3.5 hours. That gap is striking. Same underlying model. Different interfaces, different usage patterns, different outcomes. The API users aren't smarter, they've just figured out how to extract more. Or consider the speed-up data. Claude achieves a 12 times productivity boost on tasks requiring college-level expertise. On high school-level tasks, about 9 times. That's counterintuitive. You'd expect AI to help more with simpler work. Instead, the biggest gains go to complex, high-skill tasks. Exactly the work where most people assume they still need to do everything themselves. The ceiling is higher than you think. The question is why so few people have found it. If the capabilities are there, why aren't more people finding them? Start with the most obvious barrier, the interface. TechRadar, reviewing Claude Code earlier this month, noted that it's useful for programmers but not for those without technical training. The terminal is intimidating. A black screen with scrolling text and no undo button. For developers, that's home. For everyone else, it's a wall. But there's a subtler version of this problem that affects everyone, including people who never touch the terminal. The chat window is deceptively limiting. It suggests short exchanges, quick questions, contained tasks. You type, Claude responds, you move on. The interface doesn't invite you to think bigger, to hand over a complex project, to let Claude run for an hour, to treat it as a collaborator rather than a search engine. Nathan Lambert, a researcher who's been tracking Claude Code closely, put it this way. Claude doesn't need to be restricted to software development. It can control your entire computer. That's true, but nothing about the default interface suggests it. The capability exists. The invitation doesn't. The second barrier is subtler. Learned helplessness. People's expectations were set by earlier, worse models. GPT-3 was impressive, but unreliable. Early ChatGPT hallucinated constantly. If you used AI tools in 2022 or 2023, you learned to distrust them, to double-check everything. to keep tasks small and simple because anything ambitious would go off the rails. Those instincts made sense then. They're limiting now. The models have improved faster than the habits. Opus 4.5 is not GPT-3. But if your mental model is still AI makes stuff up and can't handle complexity, you'll never discover what it can actually do. You'll keep asking it to summarize articles and draft emails, tasks it could do 3 years ago, while ignoring the capabilities that have emerged since. Lab 7, AI, an engineering consultancy, published an assessment this month noting that many teams are still using Claude Code in surprisingly narrow ways. They listed underused capabilities, architectural review, long cycle tracking, multi-file refactoring, technical work that Claude handles well, but that teams aren't asking for because they don't expect it to work. The expectation becomes self-fulfilling. You don't try, so you don't discover, so you keep not trying. The third barrier is the one nobody wants to talk about. Prompting is a skill, and most people haven't developed it. This sounds like productivity guru nonsense. Learn these 5 prompting secrets. But there's something real underneath the noise. The difference between a novice prompt and an expert prompt isn't style, it's outcome. Knowing how to structure context, when to provide examples, how to break complex tasks into steps, when to push back on a weak response instead of accepting it. These are learnable skills, and they dramatically affect what you get. Andrej Karpathy, one of the most respected voices in AI, someone who understands this technology, as well as almost anyone, posted something striking last month. He said he'd never felt this much behind as a programmer. That a powerful alien tool was handed around except it comes with no manual. And then he added, failure to claim the boost feels decidedly like skill issue. Skill issue. That's a phrase from gaming. It means the problem isn't the game, it's you. Karpathy is saying, the capabilities are there. If you're not extracting them, that's on you. It's an uncomfortable framing, but it might be accurate. So what does it look like when someone actually closes the gap? We've covered some examples this week. Geoffrey Huntley, on a goat farm in rural Australia, figuring out that if you trap Claude in a loop, it will keep trying until it succeeds. The Ralph Wiggum technique, deterministically bad in an undeterministic world, a 5-line bash script that outperforms elaborate multi-agent architectures. Or Lenny Rachitsky, pointing co-work at 320 podcast transcripts and getting structured insights in 15 minutes, a task that would have taken a human analyst weeks, completed while he watched. Or the developer who took a $50,000 contract and completed it for $297 in API costs. The AI ran overnight. They woke up to working code. These aren't typical users, they're edge cases. They found the edge. They discovered where the ceiling actually is, not where they assumed it was. What do these discoverers have in common? First, they tried things they expected to fail. Huntley didn't know the loop would work. He experimented. He was willing to waste time and tokens on approaches that might go nowhere. Most of them did go nowhere. One of them became a technique that's reshaping how developers use Claude Code. Second, they treated weak outputs as prompt problems, not capability problems. When Claude produced something mediocre, they didn't conclude, Claude can't do this. They asked, what context am I missing? What instruction was ambiguous? How can I reframe the request? Third, they pushed past the default interface. They used the API. They ran overnight loops. They gave Claude access to their file system and let it operate autonomously. The chat window is a starting point, not a destination. There's a post on Dev Community from earlier this month that captures this well. A developer documenting 3 months of working with Claude Code. What they called their journey from novice to power user. Their key insight, less is more. Context efficiency beats feature abundance. What they meant, the skill isn't knowing every feature. It's knowing how to frame requests so Claude can actually help. It's understanding what context to provide and what to leave out. It's developing intuition for when to intervene and when to let Claude run. That takes time. That's not something you get from reading a tutorial. It's something you develop through practice, through trying things, failing, adjusting, trying again. The capability overhang closes through use. There's no shortcut. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If the capability overhang is real, if Claude can do significantly more than most people are extracting, then the bottleneck isn't the technology, it's us. This isn't a comfortable conclusion. We're used to blaming the tools. The AI hallucinates. The interface is clunky. The context window is too short. These complaints have validity, but they're also increasingly excuses. The people closing the overhang aren't using different models. They're not paying for secret enterprise features. They're using the same Claude that's available to everyone. They've just figured out how to ask. And this is where it gets concerning. Anthropic's economic index found that Claude provides a 12 times speed up on complex college-level tasks. That means senior professionals, people with expertise, people doing sophisticated work, are getting dramatically more productive. They're shipping more, learning faster, taking on projects they couldn't have attempted before. Meanwhile, people who haven't adapted are standing still. The gap isn't between Claude users and non-users. It's between Claude users who found the ceiling and Claude users who are still scratching the surface. Both groups are paying the same subscription. One is extracting 10 times the value. Karpathy's skill issue framing is blunt, but it captures something real. The capabilities are here, the manual isn't, and the people who figure it out anyway are pulling ahead. I want to be careful here. This isn't a moral judgment. You should be working harder isn't the message. The message is the common experience of Claude, ask a question, get an answer, move on, represents a fraction of what's possible. If that fraction is serving you well, fine. But if you've been wondering whether there's more, whether the tool could do things you haven't tried, the answer is almost certainly yes. The overhang is real. Closing it is optional. But knowing it exists seems better than not knowing. So what does exploring the overhang actually look like? It's not about learning prompting tricks or optimizing workflows. It's simpler than that. It's trying things you assume won't work. Handing Claude a problem you think is too messy, too complex, too ambiguous. Seeing what happens when you give it real context instead of sanitized test cases. It's treating weak outputs as feedback, not verdicts. Asking what you could have framed differently. Iterating instead of concluding. It's being willing to waste some time on experiments that don't pan out. Because the ones that do reveal something you wouldn't have found otherwise. The ceiling is higher than you think. The only way to find it is to push. That's all from us. Neil and Claude. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you tomorrow.